I am prepared to offer you a staff position.
You capture something of the cat, perhaps because you yourself are an outcast.
I do it to provide for the 5 hungry and precocious sisters that I live at home with. And we've had a governess.
I think you're the first person to see that cats are ridiculous, frightened, and brave, like us.
A whole cat world.
They will turn blue and communicate with us in our own language.
Did you say that they would turn blue?
Yes, of course.
Wow. What's going on in that funny little head of yours?
I think cinema has a unique place in our culture to offer an incredibly personal, empathetic, and subjective experience. And when it comes to sort of ripping into the traditions of a biopic and delivering something that's tailor-made for an artist, you couldn't ask for a richer series of ingredients to work with than Louis Wain's world, his view, his work, and everything that revolved around it in that Victorian era. And Will is the perfect marriage for that. He also gets tonally how to bring a movie to life in a way that gives us the sort of epic shifts between the comedic and the tragic.
I felt like I was familiar with the pictures of Louis Wain. I felt like in some way they were familiar to me, but I couldn't really remember where I'd seen them before. But I'd never heard of Louis Wain, and I certainly didn't know anything about his life story. So I guess that in itself felt interesting to me, that I'd kind of come across him, but had never stopped to think who the man was behind these pictures. And so, you know, as I came to this project, I started to read more and more about Louis Wain and his life. And I suppose I just was struck, first of all, by what a truly remarkable life he led. But I also found his story really inspiring. And I felt like he led, I guess in some ways, an unconventionally heroic life, in that, you know, the battles he was fighting were with, you know, tragic events in his personal life or with his own mind. You know, he struggled with mental illness through the course of his life. And at some point, I guess I just sort of fell in love with him and felt like I just really wanted to share his story with a wider audience.
When I read the script, I always read things with a very cynical eye anyway, and I was reading it with a cynical eye of a man's whole life, and that's such a difficult task. It's so ambitious. And then I knew it was different because we had like a week's rehearsal before, and what Will wanted to do was to have not an intimacy coordinator, but like a choreographer come in and work with me and Ben and see how we moved and how we could move like each other, or how we could have like sort of magnetic sort of feeling between two bodies while they were in different parts of a room and things like that. And I thought, oh, he's not really interested in how to be a film, how to make something a film, basically, in that sort of conventional way of being like anyone else. He sees the world in a very different way, like Louis did, and he has this amazing ability to hold everything in a frame and also hold emotion and deal with it. And I think very often, from my experience, I think that sometimes that emotion can become sentimental, and I just think he's just not. He can have humour and tragedy and honesty and truth all in the same breath. I think it just is who he is. It's in his fingertips, I think.
Good evening.
No.
What?
Go away. Go away.
Yes. What? Why?
What do you mean, why?
Well, I don't... Yes, of course. Yes, sorry.
What are you doing, Mr. Wayne?
What do you want me to... I don't
Get
understand.
out!
Oh, yes, sorry. Right, yes, of course. Sorry. I apologise.
I am under your employ, Mr. Wayne, but I do not expect to have to tolerate you barging in here after hours while I'm... Well, it doesn't matter what I was doing, does it?
Yes, no, sorry, of course. It's just, I have so many sisters that sometimes I forget that it's... Were you painting something?
Well, that's none of your business, Mr. Wayne. But yes, if you must know, I've got a drawing lesson with the girls tomorrow. And all you Waynes are such accomplished artists that I rather thought I could do with a bit of preparation, that's all.
I see.
As a producer, you know, we had a fantastic time with Will when he pitched his idea of how he wanted to take us on this journey visually. And, you know, very excited by his ideas of how to render Louis' art something real, something analog, something textual in the frame, and also even the aspect ratio of the frame, the Academy ratio, which is much more sort of portrait. It's like a picture frame, and that's purposeful, as is the kind of texturing of the depth of field, but also how the tableau of the organisation of the figures and everything else that's going on in Susie's amazing design, but also the artistry of every single craft, whether it's the lighting or the fabric of Michael's incredible costume designs or the colouring of the pictures and the ornaments. It's all very considered. But yet there was a real freedom in that to play as actors.
You know, we shot in this 4:3 aspect ratio, which, you know, gives it a fairy tale sort of nostalgic feeling, and it leans into the Louis Wain world of it all. But it also, I think, is very powerful for close-ups and those kind of tight two shots of Benedict and Claire where they're playing out a really intimate scene and there's very little negative space. So all you have is the sort of power and the nuance of their performances.
When I'm doing it, I have absolutely no interest in the idea that it's a film. I just don't want to know, really. And anything that feels filmy or like you're doing, you know, like the fact that you have to stand abnormally close to someone or you know, the classic line that people say, which is, it won't look like that on camera. I'm like, well, it feels like that for me on camera. So I'm pretty sure that's what's coming out my eyeballs, that I'm deeply uncomfortable and this feels weird. So it's not like I'm method. I'm definitely not method, but I just want to be in it. I don't really want to know. And that's not, I mean, I'm interested in what Will was doing and the lighting was beautiful. But now I see it and I go, that is why some people are directors and some people are not, because, you know, you see things visually. You see things in a technical, visual way, whilst also, hopefully, in an emotional way. And I think that's where some directors are more that way, and Will just meets in the middle, and that's a real gift.
Are you an illustrator?
Yes.
You're very muddy.
I was attacked by a 1.5-ton ball.
Oh!
The biggest influence on the world of this film, what we came to sort of call as a shorthand Wain's world, was Louis Wain himself. And, you know, whether it be in the set design or the costume design, we wanted to kind of show the same delight in colours and patterns that Louis Wain seemed to have, and also to, I guess, share in some of his witticisms and his idiosyncratic charm, I guess. But also, I suppose I sometimes find when I'm watching biopics, I sort of have this sense of how a life has been exploited in some way in service of a movie. And I really wanted this movie to work in service of his life. And I sort of had this feeling that I wanted the movie to feel like a life in some way. And I wanted us to be able to share in the journey with him and to, I guess, have some sense of time and to be able to almost kind of reminisce about earlier scenes in the movie alongside Louis, you know, as an older man. And so I think those ambitions, I guess, informed some of the structural decisions and some of the kind of ways in which we decided to tell the story.
What we really wanted to highlight was the idea that a successful life is a life that experiences love and connection. And if you struggle in terms of mental health with feeling different or behaving differently or seeing things differently to what seems to be the norm or the prescriptive norm, then that's all right. And you should still have somebody in your life, hopefully, and the world around you to help you celebrate what is true to you. And that's very much what happens with Louis, with his relationship with Emily. He finds someone who is brave, focused on him and what he has to offer, and gives him an emotional language to understand things he struggles with and to find a purpose that sustains him throughout his whole life. It's love and connection. That's really what the film is about.
I feel electricity. Can you feel it?
This is our place. This is where I'll be, Louis. When you need me.
I really felt like Emily was a breath of fresh air for me. Like, she really, really was. I had not read a part which was someone who looked at the world in a very similar way to me, in a way that she just saw it as beautiful and wanted to eat it, basically, and live it, and was rarely given the opportunity to. And every moment that she could, she took a little ounce, even if that was a stone or a rock or like a feeling or just reading a book. Like, that was, she lived inside it. And it was a joy to play someone who wasn't every 5 seconds bawling their eyes out or dealing with a trauma or drama, and someone who was falling in love and seeing the world and allowing someone to see the beauty of the world. And that's sort of what her purpose is in this film. And I, you know, at drama school, they say there's no small parts, only small actors.
With Benedict and Claire, I felt like, with both of them, I felt like they make it seem, at least to me, so effortless. And they're able to, like, very gracefully navigate the lighter moments with the more sort of hard-hitting, dramatic moments. But what was particularly exciting for me was watching them together. And even in the rehearsal process, I started to get a sense of this special kind of chemistry that they had. They just seemed completely at ease in one another's company.
Claire's a dear friend, and we've worked together before. We know each other quite well. So there was something quite kind of weird about that intimacy. But as far as falling in love with her, or her Emily, I should say, it was a magical moment, because Louis doesn't have a language for it, and he doesn't really know that what he's doing is very obvious. So he's just sitting there as an innocent, just being hit with it. And there's something kind of comic about how long Will holds on him. He played a favourite piece of music of mine, Max Richter's reworking of Vivaldi's Four Seasons, that beautiful track of Spring. And it carried me to this place where I could just stare and stare and stare at Emily and lose myself in her. As the camera came closer or the lens racked in closer, I couldn't really tell you what happened. I was just lost in it. And that's there in the film. And her, her sort of embarrassed, but also wide-eyed shifts that Claire plays so delicately and brilliantly as she does with all of her work. And it's a joy to see that electricity, as it's termed in the title of the film, come alive in that moment between the two of them and connect.
We're a family of mischief makers, Miss Richardson. We may as well have been called the Shenanigans. And you'll have your hands full with these three. And as for you two, high time you found some nice husbands of your own, don't you think?
We will, Mother, in time.
Well, I was given quite the look from a hatted man with a moustache on the bus. Absolutely enormous moustache and a very prominent brow. Yes, it was very prominent. It was like a dome. But it was quite the glance. It was embarrassing.
Did he seem wealthy, Josephine? Did he seem wealthy?
Josephine's going to marry a man with a big mouth.
We were doing it, and they didn't warn me. I was eating my dinner in the scene, and then suddenly sort of this music starts playing. And I was like, can anyone else hear that? What's going on? And it was basically to encourage Ben to look at me with in a loving way and have sort of like some sort of massive moment. And that sort of helps as well. But yeah, I don't really ever need any help with falling in love. I fall in love all the time. Surreal. It's an error.
One of the things that I think Benedict and Claire handled so well was this sense of them both being people who never quite felt like they had landed, or never quite felt like they'd made a full connection with the world around them. But in the meeting of each other, were able to kind of open their hearts and minds and to sort of appreciate even the wider world and its beauty. And they're able to do that together. And I think there was something about the way that they collaborated through the scenes and the way they were supportive of each other that I think manifested that feeling of like giving each other the strength that maybe you need to sort of be that vulnerable. And I suppose in the end, one of the big through lines of the movie is the question of whether Louis Wain, as someone who I think it's fair to say never really had a super easy time of it, is he able to achieve that level of vulnerability and to feel as at peace as he did in the company of Emily? Is he able to do that on his own? And interestingly, we sort of, not entirely by design, but we shot a lot of the scenes with Benedict and Claire earlier on in the shoot. And it meant that we were carrying the feeling of those scenes with us through the shooting of the rest of the movie. And I think that often did affect the feeling of those later scenes as well.
I think sincerity was definitely a watchword for every aspect of this film. He approaches all of his life with this extraordinary energy, and yet within that, he truly believes he is going to be a masterful inventor, a champion boxer, a great opera composer. And the sort of comic tragedy is where he falls short. However, the real kicker is that he was the most exceptional artist. I mean, the early body of his work is very representational, highly skilled, and then we know him better now, I guess, for the more anthropomorphic illustrations of cats. But even within that experimentation and that diversion into something stylized, there's a huge amount whereby he finds a language and a form to reflect our nature as human beings. It's not just about celebrating the cats for all of their oddity and peculiarity and silliness and weakness, as Emily confides in him that she feels is us as well as a species. He really does then take that to heart, and they become a prism for reflecting his understanding of the world at large. There were satirical pieces and politicized pieces, as well as just celebratory pieces to do with quite how silly and funny and profane and tragic we all are.
Mr. Wain, we have been showing your cat pictures to our staff. They've been laughing, they've been smiling. Tell them, Alicia, tell them I'm not lying.
One of our typists, she took some of your pictures home to her kids, and she said that they were running about on their hands and knees pretending to be cats.
Pretending to be cats, how cute.
And asking to have cats for their birthday.
We're gonna get you out there, you're a personality. Wouldn't you say, Alicia, honey? You're Mr. Cat. You're Cat Man.
Cat Man.
Huh? Cat Man.
Cat Man.
Louis and the character that he was and what he represents and his gift and his also real burden in life is how he sees the world, and that the world doesn't really appreciate how he views it, basically. That no one really wants to hear it. And I really thought that was a really important thing, and to deal with somebody who may be diagnosed or undiagnosed or anything, who has what people just deem to be some sort of mental disorder, not being categorised and not being put in a box, and them just being allowed to be a bloody person. So whether they're male or female or leading or supporting, I felt like that was a really important story that I really wanted to be part of.
I think one of the things that is so beguiling about Louis Wain and the accounts of how he was, and some of his own writing actually, is that he seemed so unembarrassedly himself. And it's almost like he couldn't help but be who he was. And that wasn't always very helpful. Sometimes it was actually really unhelpful to him that he was a certain way. But he just couldn't help it. And I think what comes with that is a sort of, yeah, like I say, a kind of innocence that at times can be funny, that he believes in something so absolutely, and yet to us it feels so alien. And at other times it can be the source of, I suppose, tragedy, that, you know, he was holding on to something so hard, and to see the kind of reality take that away from him can also be kind of heartbreaking in a way.
Just remember, however hard things get, however much you feel like you're struggling, the world is full of beauty. And it's up to you to capture it, Louis. To look. And to share it with as many people as you can. You are a prism through which that beam of life refracts.
It's often the case when you're doing a signature or something physical that connects you to the spiritual of the animal you're portraying. And with this, I had plenty of that with the artwork. I do a little bit myself, but to really kind of copy his style and his methodology, again, sort of felt like playing with the presence. And that comes with a great onerous sense of duty, but also a massive wave of love and understanding, and really enriches the experience of playing a character as unique as Louis.